Highly sensitive people endure a sense of loneliness virtually their entire lives. It's something that we accept, and it's something that we just learn to live with. We've experienced so much misunderstanding, non-acceptance, and rejections of the traits that naturally come to us, that to survive the hurt, we withdraw and we isolate. We long for meaning, we long for authenticity, and we absolutely need depth in our relationships. So if we can't find that, we would rather be alone because the pain is almost palpable to us. If we are unable to share our gifts with the world, we start shutting down our hearts and we decide we better not love as deeply as we can because the world has told us not to feel emotions as deeply as we do. And unfortunately, once we start shutting down our hearts like that, that can become very detrimental, not just to our psychological health, but to our physical health as well. And oftentimes, our body will speak for us. And when I think about where it stems from, it can be from our childhood, from being raised in families who didn't quite understand us. It was from being around people telling us to toughen up, stop being so sensitive, get over it. And that constant repetitive statement, stop being so sensitive, led to a repression of our true self. And I imagine the disconnection between us and our true self led to the initial feelings of loneliness because we abandoned ourselves. Some of us were fortunate enough to perhaps have one caring and empathetic, highly sensitive parent, because apparently this trait of sensitivity is inherited, and that would have been really helpful at nurturing our sensitivity because they would have understood us and they would have also intuited exactly what we need and how to reassure us as we were growing up dealing with this trait of sensitivity. Unfortunately, it's a very common experience that I hear from other highly sensitive people that they had grown up around narcissistic parents and caregivers. Some of them, both parents were narcissistic, and to a highly sensitive person, the sort of mental, psychological torture that we endured while we're that young is almost indescribable. And there's still a lot of people who don't quite understand what narcissistic abuse is. So the loneliness exacerbates even more. And the loneliness can also be attributed to us not really being accepted or understood by society in general. Our traits aren't really seen in high regard yet. However, I think the tide is turning. The highly extroverted, outspoken, physically oriented, highly competitive types of personalities we're always encouraged and glamorized by society. And those sort of traits don't come naturally to us. In fact, some of us had to pretend that we actually have these traits just to survive, maybe a workplace or superficial friendships. And we actually feel quite depleted even being around those sort of people and in those sort of environments. So that made us feel even lonelier. And then when it comes to loneliness in relationships, the biggest issue for us as highly sensitive people is that we tend to outgrow people very quickly. So when we've outgrown a person in a relationship, we start to feel a sense of discomfort. I don't believe that love is enough. I think a person that you're in a relationship with needs to be wanting to grow with you. I understand everybody grows at a different pace, but there comes a point where the other person could be completely stagnant and resistant, and that's when you feel that there's a problem in the relationship. And that's usually because we've outgrown them. And so we could be in a relationship that we know we've outgrown, and we could sit there quietly for years, living in hope. That's when we feel deeply lonely within a relationship. And one of the most painful things for us highly sensitive people is to actually be physically with someone, but they have emotionally checked out. But I now choose to believe that this sense of loneliness isn't necessarily such a bad thing. And we can choose to see it in a more positive light. Perhaps it's also teaching us to enjoy our own company. And perhaps it's even led us to develop our innate gifts and talents. What if loneliness indicated a greater need for us to connect with ourselves?